What's up, everybody? We are live. Welcome to the show, the Awaken Live podcast. With me today is our guest, Levi Markwardt from Harder to Kill Training out in Iowa. Real quick, guys, we do have the newest and latest issue of MadFit magazine coming up. So listeners, make sure that you go out to the website, IamAwakenAlive.com, and use this promo code, MadFit10, all caps, MADFIT, the number 10. And receive 10% off your next subscription to the magazine. Cool, so go check that out, guys. I want to turn it over to Levi Markwardt now. If you guys aren't familiar with him, this guy is a just absolute beast. Because he and I have become friends through Facebook and some mutual friends as well. The guy lifts just an incredible amount of weight and always makes it look super easy. Levi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Being on the show. So let's get into it real quick. We got lots to cover today. I want to pick your brain on several things. First off, tell everybody a little bit about sort of yourself, where you're located, what you do in the gym with your students and athletes and all that stuff. Just a little bit of brief talk about Harder to Kill and
okay.
Coach.
Sounds good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm in the corner of Northwest Iowa. Spirit Lake, Iowa is where my gym in the school where I work. I work at the local high school as well, and so I work with kids basically 6th grade through 12th grade, in season, out of season, both male and female, and we're just doing a lot of strength training, working on foundational movements and providing a foundation that they can build on and build from. Hopefully, if they're not playing sports in college, which is always a goal for me as a strength coach, but if they're not, that they're enjoying a lifetime of fitness and when they're in the school, they're learning how to incorporate, that type of lifestyle the rest of their life. And then I'm at the gym when I'm not at the school. My gym is a 24-hour health club, a standalone club, and I've got adults that pay, just the regular gym dues. Get 24-hour access with that, and then I do adult personal training as well in the afternoons and late mornings, and then some evenings if my schedule allows. And then the Harder to Kill training is my online business, and Harder to Kill is basically it's a nod to my dad who passed away a little over almost 11 years ago now from pancreatic cancer. And Harder to Kill is, well, it's got kind of an aggressive name. It's about taking care of yourself, and it's not about being harder to kill if you get jumped in the alley. It's about being harder to kill from our lifestyle and making better choices and living what you intend to do.
Yeah, no, I mean it's really about making a body that is this sort of temple that's protected from sickness and being unwell.
Yes, exactly.
And there's we all know the people that cancer's a bitch, and I'm sorry about your father, and I think it's awesome that you've turned that into a motivation to help yourself and others. But we do know those stories of the perfectly healthy person that just drops dead. But
right.
And that gets thrown out a lot in the conversation with guys that are in a position like you and me that are trying to help other people. But the point is that you can take control and you can take charge, and you can definitely make certain choices that are going to give you a longer, healthier, better lifestyle and make you more resilient to being sick.
Absolutely.
I never go to the doctor. And even when I do get sick, it's sort of a quick rebound back versus friends I have that don't take care of themselves. They're in the doctor all the time, and they generally just don't even look well. You just sort of see that sort of charcoal gray look in their face. So very cool. And now you yourself, I think one time you had this really inspirational thing on Facebook. I'd love for you to talk about. You yourself were not always the monster you are now, right?
No. I've only really taken my own health and wellness serious since my dad's passing. And so when he passed away, I was approaching 300 pounds. I was the kind of trainer that did not lead from the front. It was more or less, here's what you're going to do, and ignore me while I'm, snacking on the Snickers in the background, type deal. And so, excuse me, after my dad passed, it was kind of the slap in the face that I needed to really kind of, to really kind of wake up and lead my family first and foremost, but then, lead my business and just be who I'm called to be. And I wasn't living that life at all. And so, I always tell people that was the last lesson my dad taught me while he was here on earth. I of course still learn from him through memories and different situations, but while he was alive, I don't think that he was necessarily trying to teach me anything, but what I picked up while he was in his last weeks was, I can't do this. I got to do what I can do. And like you said, you can't always prevent everything, but I need to do what I can do to be here for my family. And it's not that I think my dad was checking out early, but I know that I can do better, and that's what he would want from me, and that's what I need to do for my family. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
And you're the second person in 2 consecutive shows to use the term awake on the Awaken Live broadcast. As you had a turning point in your life. Listen, I can't pay for this kind of publicity that you guys are giving us. I'm so fortunate that you guys are using this term.
Right. You're welcome.
Thank you. That's so cool. That's so cool that he could jumpstart that, through a very unfortunate thing. Now you have this sort of ripple effect now, right? So you make a difference in your own life, and now that ultimately a legacy of a trainer is how many other lives can you touch and make well and healthy. But before we talk more about the ripple effect, because I do want to talk about it some with you, because I do think you're doing great work and you're going to create a lasting legacy. But let's go back to being an unhealthy trainer. We actually there is an article on our site called "Why Are Some Trainers Chubby?" Right, and so there's a little bit of this and that to it. Right, there are those trainers that do not have the aesthetic Greek statue body type, but really know their chops and are actually in really good shape themselves, right? Then there are, like you said, and your example, do what I say, not what I do. I'm just a fat guy over here telling you what to do at the gym, right? Okay.
Yep.
And that's sort of kind of where you had fallen into. What was it like telling your clients that? I mean, like from a teaching perspective, when you're in that lifestyle of being unhealthy and still being in a gym. I didn't actually know that part about you, that you were still a trainer then.
Yeah. That's a really good question.
Thanks.
There's obviously some fantastic. If you look in the world of strength, if you're looking at strongman or you're looking at powerlifting, there's definitely some fantastic coaches that don't have the aesthetics that we come to expect. Probably thanks to the explosion of fitness online, but it's one of those deals where I know for me, I'm working with younger kids that are and I always have worked with junior high and high school kids, and that's where I started as well. And so I'm trying to get these kids to buy into some training and buy into big picture type stuff, and you can't be big picture if you're just big, in my opinion. If you're a niche trainer, powerlifting, strongman, things like that, and you're doing your own thing, and I think you can look like whatever you want and eat whatever you want, and as long as you're happy and you're getting the results you need for your whatever your sport is or whatever your clients are doing, that's by all means do what you need to do. But I think for me, it was a little bit different situation, and I hate to compare myself to others just because everybody's so different and their situations are what they are. But I noticed that in order for me to do a good job and be able to respect myself, I guess, was kind of, I had to make those changes. And I had to, if I'm working with athletes, young athletes, and I'm trying to get them to get off pop, and I'm trying to get them to be aware of what they're eating, post game, so they're not eating, slamming slices of pizza and all that other kind of stuff, ice cream from the concession stand, then I need to do a better job doing the same sort of thing. I can't expect them to follow along if I can't follow along. So that was kind of what my whole mindset was.
Yeah, and I'm still thinking working with adults, what they would think, but a kid will still listen to you, adult. And so you're right, it really is up to you to have taken charge and been like, all right, I need to be better, because then they'll listen, but they really will take you serious and start to see the bigger picture, as to steal your phrasing. I know when I was a high school athlete, there was always that one coach. I mean, I had my first cross country coach I ever had. The guy was like 270. He ran Clydesdale races every now and then, but it's like, like, how are you the running coach, right? And then I'm in schools, and the next coach was this guy that, like, I remember one day, to prove a point, I mean, he was this like tiny dude, just like the stringy calf and leg. It's just like one long muscle. One long slow twitch muscle was from his hip down to his toe. And
right.
I remember one day, to prove a point, he just got real mad at us and showed up with like 3 boxes of trophies and just like dumped them out in front of us. He's like, just yelling at us, you guys take this as a joke, like, this is my life, like, seriously. But it was the point. He looked the part. He backed it up in his practice. He could outrun all of us,
right?
And he had the rewards from performance, the trophies to back it up. Versus the first guy I had, I was just mad all the time at him. Like, why are you telling me to run, dude? You can't even run. You can't even run around the school once.
Right.
And that was my mentality. But because I was a high school student, I still listened to him because he was my coach. But there was a huge difference in the way I took practice when I had the other coach, and the way I viewed his coaching. I now believed what he said, not just doing what he said. And I think that's what you are onto. Instead of just getting junior high and high school, they will do what you say, but then get them to believe what you say and why you're saying it.
Right. And, I think it's important too, because for me anyway, is to be, doing the same sort of thing I'm having my kids do. Just so they know that there's an end point. No, not necessarily, I shouldn't say an end point, but there is a place. A lot of kids get frustrated because their hormones aren't where they're going to be, and their bodies are changing, and it's a little bit awkward and things like that. And I just think it's important that if I can live that, what my expectations are for them, if I can live that out, then it helps maybe with patience a little bit, and they can kind of see that, with time, I think big changes happen. We just have to be that consistent presence in the weight room or in the practice field or whatever it is, and that, when we're patient, big things can happen. And
you have to remind them that they will grow into those big goofy feet that showed up overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
They started tripping over.
Yeah,
it's kind of like puppies.
Right.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about your training. So the stuff you put on Facebook, which is just fantastic. I mean, it really is. The stuff you do is so great and
Thank
so
you.
strong. And I don't think people can really appreciate it. I think that's why, like, I'm so quick to jump in on the conversation. And when you get the haters out there, like you and Bud, I come in. I feel like I'm this guy that comes in to bat for you guys sometimes, because I know it's not professional for you guys to get in it with the haters, but every now and then I got to say something to these people, because I understand what you guys are doing and where you're coming from, as a fairly strong guy myself, and as a guy that does some odd object training as well as a lot of kettlebell work as well. And these people, I think they cannot really appreciate, because they've never been able to do anything remotely close to it. Is why they say some of these most asinine comments. But I do want to say on the show, to those listening, Levi is the real deal, guys. I've seen his work. For myself, this guy makes it look effortless, even at the highest of weights. And so it's really cool. But let's talk about that, because you do some very specific things. And I've noticed that you do a lot of the same things over and over again, and you're chasing you're just chasing like the next little PR, but you put in so much work for it, and auxiliary work. I really want to talk about your auxiliary work, because I think I think it's actually damn genius. Some of the auxiliary work you do
Okay.
with the bands. I really want to talk about that because I think there's so much to gain from that. But let's talk about it. So what would you say your main focus is with your own training, in your words, to our audience?
Okay. Well, I first thank you for all the kind words. I appreciate it. That's a very, very kind introduction. But my main goal, I have a 14-year-old daughter, so my main goal is just to look as scary as I can for as long as I can, for at least the next 4 or 5 years here, just so I can leave a lasting impression on some young men. But beyond that,
I appreciate that. How tall are you, Levi?
6'1".
6'1". Okay. Tall guy.
Yeah, tall enough. Right. So beyond that, right now my focus is more on get ups and bench pressing, trying to chase my body weight in each of those movements.
Right, and that's what I was referring to. The same couple of lifts I've seen you do over and over again, repeatedly chasing greatness.
Yeah. That's. I think I'm a little bit obsessive with that sometimes to the point where maybe I get in my own way a little bit. But those are right now. And then I've got. I do try to keep my conditioning up because that is my favorite. If I only had one way to train, I really do enjoy. I was talking to Joseph DeLeo not too long ago, and I really do enjoy that strength endurance aspect with snatching and swings. I really like to push myself with that sort of training, but right now I'm kind of stuck on the bench press and the get up. So that's where I'm spending most of my time, working on my mobility and my hips and my T-spine and my shoulders, and I'm trying to do a better job of recovering in between, but I've got that itch. I'm always trying to scratch it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Now you're chasing a body weight lift in either of those. So those people that maybe listening for the first time, that would be Levi's doing a Turkish get up with the exact amount that he weighs. How much is that?
I'm anywhere between 97 and 100 kilograms. So, but 214 to 220 is where I walk around most days.
That's impressive. And so you were at what? You got 206 up the other day. Was that a bench press or a TGU?
That was a bench press. I got it locked out, but I wasn't able to stand.
You didn't get all the way up.
Right.
That's
I'm
awesome.
close. I'm close, but.
And the bench press is so I wrote an article, the 5 lifts every man should do, and it's been a fairly good article for us as far as traffic and reading, and in it I've had the bench press in there, and I'll put the 5 things in there specific. I had a bottoms up press, a Turkish get up, the bench press, the swing. And I'm drawing a blank on the 5th one right now. But people kept saying, well, why wasn't the goblet squat in there and this and that? And I actually, if I had 6, the goblet squat would have been in there. But the reason I put the bench press in there, and to answer the question that I keep getting asked online, it's an old-timey strongman lift. And the reason I put it in there and the reason I like guys like you doing it and these guys bring it back is because you really do have to be strong to do the bench press, and it requires a funky kind of strength. And if you get good at it, you can do a lot of weight. There is a correlation there. Like, not only do you have to be strong to do it, but once you get the technique down, you can do a freaky amount of weight with it because it's one of the most efficient ways to get a very heavy weight over your head. So that being said, the reason I put it in my article is because men are weak nowadays, and I was like, let's take it back to a lift that will make you strong all over. And so that's why I put it in there and did sacrifice something as important as the goblet squat, because the emphasis was men are not as strong as they used to be. So that's why I put it in there, and that's why I think it's cool that this lift is starting to get some popularity again, because it really is a tremendous lift, and more people should be doing.
It just takes so much practice. It's one of those things that if it doesn't click right away with some people, that people get frustrated because you have to learn how your body moves. You have to. I believe you really have to have that foundation set. Your shoulders, your hips, your T-spine, Before I even tried it, I've been doing get-ups, forever, it seemed like, and windmills forever, and just learning how my body moves, because, once you get in that awkward position, or what will feel awkward in the beginning, and understanding that you're actually not pressing anything, but you're getting underneath it. And that's why you can put so much weight overhead once you learn what you're doing. And it's not.
Yeah, because you're right. It's not a press. You get the weight to. You basically support it with the structure of your joints and your bones,
Right.
which can support a lot of weight, and then you just move your entire body
around it and under it.
Yep. It's already fixed.
And
that's what it's supposed to be.
I think it looks really cool when I watch somebody do it, but online it seems that nobody gets more irritated with me than when I post a heavy bench press on Instagram, and I get all kinds of comments and things like that. And it's it looks, I said, well, I think it looks cool. Other people think it looks stupid or it looks weird, and they don't understand it. And it's one of those things where it's definitely not for everybody, and it's not something I recommend that you see somebody doing online and then you go trying it yourself. I think it makes a lot of sense to actually learn how to do it one-on-one, or if maybe you've got a video series that breaks it down for you. I'm sure there's some.
And I agree with you too. Spend time on the Turkish get up and the windmills as precursors to those. Definitely, but and people don't get it because it's a lost lift. There's a lot of lifts that people don't get because they haven't been around for 50, 60, some even longer than that years. Once it got to the gym and the machine world, is if it ain't a pec deck or a tricep extension cable machine, I'm familiar with it, so it must be stupid.
Right.
By the way, there was a disgusting video somebody put on your wall this morning of the guy snapping their leg.
That was pretty gross, wasn't it? Yeah, that was.
But it was great because you said that wouldn't happen if they were using a kettlebell. That was hilarious. I do find that Instagram is much more ruthless with the commentary than Facebook.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know why it is, but it's unbelievable what people say. I would never run my mouth to you. You're a big, strong guy. And and you also wrestle, right? I saw that adult wrestling thing. That was pretty cool, man. How'd you get back into, or where'd you find an adult wrestling league?
That was on my alma mater. So every year they do an alumni wrestling meet, and we go back and we wrestle. Those that are able to, or schedule works out or whatever, go back, and it's the alumni versus the current team. And so got to wrestle this year. They had a varsity duel before we had our alumni meet, and so it was against the younger kids, JV kids. But it's always, which is fine with me. I'm turning 39 here in a month and a half, and I really don't need to my ego is still high enough. I don't need to be embarrassed by some varsity athletes. So it's good. It was a good time, and I try to do it every year when the schedule works out. So it was I don't know how many more years I'll do it, but it's set up for.
I would love to. I would love it if my alma mater did that. That would be.
Yeah, I don't know how many people do it, but yeah, it's fun that ours
does it. I miss wrestling, and it's certainly a cool sport. I got all fired up last weekend. I watched the NCAA's, or maybe it was 2 weekends ago, the NCAA championships. Penn State just had that ridiculous run of
they're
championships. Gym the next day was doing some old wrestling drills. And just feeling it out, man. It's great. My body does not move as snappy as the rest of it.
Right.
I mean, I am 60 pounds heavier, though. I mean, I was 125-pound wrestler. I'm 185 pound, coach. So
right.
Definitely different. Although I do think I'd still ride legs a lot at this weight, just because it's so familiar to me. That would be a totally different animal, an 185-pound guy that rides legs.
Yeah, that was my go-to as well. I was the leg rider. I called it aggressive stalling. I get on top and throw the legs in.
It's a great way to control a guy's hips.
Right.
Control their whole body, and you're always able to jockey for a position while the other person's trying to figure out how to get their leg free so they can get somewhere. So it's very frustrating and exhausting for another opponent.
Yes.
It's not not dissimilar, in my opinion, to in MMA, a clinch against the cage. It's very tiresome for somebody. You could use the phrase you use, like an aggressive stall, but you're still wearing the other person down. And all they're trying to do is get back to a neutral position to then start to advance themselves. You have them at a deficit. So I see a similarity in the two strategies.
Oh yeah, I mean, anytime you can make your opponent, carry your body weight, that's a perfect strategy for because then you're going to tap into their reserves and see how much conditioning they have, and the strikes don't hurt as much if you're in a. No, I shouldn't say that. I don't have any experience fighting, but I would assume the strikes don't hurt as much once you're tired. But I'll leave that to the pros, I guess.
It never feels good to get hit in the face.
Right. That's why. As soon as I said it, I'm like, well, I probably don't know what I'm talking about.
So that's funny. But who's going to question you, right? Okay, so back to the talk of the bench press, and then going backwards to the Turkish get up. You're one of the few people I've seen incorporate bands into the Turkish get up. Let's talk about that a little bit. Share some of your ideas, some of the results you've seen. Do you do this with your athletes as well? That sort of thing.
Great. Yeah, good question. The bands, I really feel like it really challenged me in those bottom two positions. Once you feel the tension, you can adjust to the tension. But when you go from no tension or no additional tension to a lot of additional tension when the band provides it, at least with my setup, there's no additional tension until I start to move. And so once you feel that extra tension from the band, you can make those necessary adjustments. But I find that first position or two to be the most difficult, getting used to immediate additional tension, and so it really helps me with my balance, I think, and my shoulder stability. Because if I try to rush, it also slows me down. Because if I try to rush through it, that band will remind me that I'm not nearly as strong as I like to think that I am. So it does a really good job of making me feel each position and own each position before I transition through the next one. And then again at the top, you get the most tension when you're standing at the top. So it really forces you to lock out, make sure that your shoulder stays packed, your elbows. Because once your elbow goes and you have that tension pulling down on you, you can basically just stop the lift. It is a little bit more dangerous, I think, just because you're kind of tied to that position. It's a little bit tougher to bail out. Again, with my setup, I have to be attached to my rack, my power rack. So there's not a lot of freedom in movement. Like I have to make sure if I make a mistake or if I have to try to move, I'm very limited in where I can go just because I got that rack next to me. So again, it slows me down, increases my focus, things like that. It's something that, and I also use chains quite a bit, again, just from a stability standpoint. If you can, once those chains start moving, you have to work extra hard to stabilize everything. And I really think probably the chains do more for me, I think, than the band. The bands are fun, and they're definitely a unique challenge, but I think the chains are even a little bit more of a game changer for the 1RM type stuff. So again, you have to slow way down. You have to make sure that you're not swaying. You want to keep those chains as still as possible. And I usually I've used them on a kettlebell before, but right now I mainly use chains on a bar. And then the band I use on a kettlebell. I'm trying to come up with a way to get a band on a bar. I've been playing around with it for a little bit, but so far it's the bars are on the chains are on the bar and the bands are on the bell.
You could use two bands on the bar. One band that loops around it, and then the other band that loops in it. So you have 2 points of contact because it's hard to get in the middle. That's just an idea. Try playing with it.
Well, I actually had that idea, but I'm not strong enough. My bands are too much resistance.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have any smaller ones. So yeah, that was something that came across my mind.
You gotta get the little boy bands. You got the big ones out there.
Yeah, I got to get the little ones. You're right.
So we just started over at Asylum Fitness a 10-week series on the Turkish Get Up. I try to revisit it a few times a year. It is a staple in our sessions over there, but like I actually do like a series on it at least once a year where I really cover it in depth. And one of the drills I like to use, going to each position, breaking it down, but taking 10 seconds to get into each position, so that because a lot of times it's just sit up, bridge, half kneeling. You know what I'm saying? Like they go the cues like that, right?
Yep.
Right, but taking time to move into that position super slow.
Sure.
It is I found to be a great drill with myself and my development as well as my students. Um, but it's like, it kind of reminds me of what you're saying with the band. When you slow down, you you're able to see all the little mistakes you're making, and then you can correct them and then positively reinforce them.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree I haven't done it for 10 seconds, but I have done that pause drill before, and it is very effective. It really forces you to keep that arm locked. I think looking at a lot of my kids. Yeah, a lot of my kids that go through it, we rush, and so yeah, that's not a bad drill, just to make sure that you're doing the little things correctly, and that way you're able to reap the full benefits. No, that's a good drill for sure.
And I'll have people in the class that I'm still counting, and they're already in the position.
Yep.
They've already gotten to the next position that say you shouldn't be there yet, and it lets them know that they need to slow the movement down. The one that's really killer is coming out of the bent kneeling to tall half kneeling.
Yep.
That's great. Onto that, you really learn a lot about your position and stuff. Cool. So, all right. So we've talked about the Turkish get up. We've talked about bent pressing. We've talked about some conditioning. Let's go back to talking about more of your athletes. So listen, this is a hot topic right now with youth sports. We see it all the time. You're actually the first coach on the show with a majority of youth. We've had other coaches that have the age range, right, 6 to 86. But it seems that your main focus is young athletes.
Yep.
Listen, let's talk about specialization. All right, I'm just going to throw the word out there. I'm not even going to ask you another question. Specialization, go.
As someone who spends time only in the weight room, if an athlete specializes in a sport, that means I get to spend more time with them. So in that regard, I kind of like it. But I think what you're getting at is, all the travel teams and the club teams that are, you play volleyball, and then you have your high school season, and then your winter club season, and you're playing in the spring, and that I'm not a big fan of. Just for the simple reason that anytime you travel that much and you're doing the same thing over and over and over as a young athlete, you're not going to spend the amount of time you need to getting proper rest, getting proper nutrition, because you're always on the go. You're not getting any kind of strength training in, or at least consistently getting strength training in, again, because you're always on the go. You got a lot of people that are afraid to lift weights because they think they're going to be too sore to actually perform their sport. And that's a whole conversation for another time. But making sure that kids are strong enough to handle. I'll keep with volleyball just because I mentioned it, but all that repetitive jumping and landing and all that very quick lateral movements and forward, backward, and then you're jumping again, and you're doing all these high repetition type stuff. If you don't have that strength foundation, I think you're only going to be asking for trouble. And a lot of times it's only tendonitis, which is good, but that's a reminder that we need to, hey, there's a dysfunction that we got to address. And if you don't address it, it's just gonna lead to something serious or long term. And so in that regard, I'm not a fan of specialization. I think it's very important that the kids need to, get a huge, if you're just a football player, if you're an offensive lineman or defensive lineman, I think wrestling's got a lot to offer you. Just learning how to move your body and change positioning and getting under your opponent, or learning to manhandle somebody or getting manhandled. There's some lessons in that as well. So I really like to see that. Same with track. Even a sport like wrestling that doesn't require running, The better sprinter you are, the more efficient sprinter you are, the better athlete you are. And so if you're a good runner, that's going to have some carryover. And so there's benefits to be had for every sport that's going to carry over to a different sport. And I really think kids miss out on that. I don't see a lot of specialization here at my school just because we're in a smaller market, and the kids have to play multiple sports. So that's my frustration as a strength coach, is that if you're playing 4 sports, you're always in season, and a lot of times that means I don't get to see you as much as I'd like. And so that's why I started off that way. But I think that kids are always looking after that scholarship. That big money payday type deal. So they're always trying to get recruited. They're always trying to get as much exposure as possible. And while I understand that mindset and can appreciate that desire, I do think there's a lot to be said for taking a break and developing your body as a whole, as opposed to just that one skill or that one sport.
Okay, three things from there. First, we're going to save some time towards the end of the show. I know you said it's another conversation for another day. We'll save time. We'll talk about playing when you're sore, or the fear of working out so much that you're too sore to perform. We'll definitely talk about that here in a couple minutes. The second thing, love what you said about the football player wrestling. I was working the Christmas tree lot this year. This young kid, he's 14. He's a freshman in high school. I was begging him to go out and join the wrestling team, but all he wants to do is play football. I was like, you will be a much better football player. And I looked at him and said, none of that. Is like, I can look at you. I can tell right now you have the chance to make states within 2 years wrestling and probably be a dynamite wrestler. I said, you're not a football player. You're a wrestler. He wouldn't listen to me. It was very frustrating. I was like, I know a wrestler when I see one, even if they're not a wrestler. Like, this kid, he had it, man. He had the work ethic. He was already ox strong. I was like, you got to do it. Anyway, that's a different thing. I was frustrated, but I agree with you 100%. Being manhandled and learn to manhandle somebody else. You learn to use your body in another way. We had Rafe Kelly on the show, and he sits there. He says the same thing I say. Wrestlers, there's nothing else you can do that will create as good an athlete as wrestling, because it gives you such awareness of your body, another person's body, and it just creates this unbelievable full body athleticism.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that here in Iowa, obviously it's a little bit different, but
it's a bit of a big deal, right? Yeah.
It is, and which is good.
That was sarcasm. We know. It's like football in Texas.
Right. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, and that learning leverage is so important in any sport, and just so. Learning how your body moves and learning how to adjust and things like that. It's crazy. I've been able to work with a handful of wrestlers over the years that have gone on to Division I scholarships, and it's just amazing. It's just a different mindset altogether, and it's a lot of fun to work with the wrestlers, just because a lot of them don't know when to stop. You have to kind of stop them. So. Otherwise, they just keep going. But it's fun. It's a challenge. It's a different kind of challenge, and it's something that I really have learned to come to appreciate. And it's a very unique sport, and it takes a unique athlete to succeed at it. So.
And then the third thing, even though I didn't ask you a question, you knew it was a question, and it was a bit unfair because you know where I come from in a mindset of play. We should always be doing this and that it's okay to play, it's okay to things. And basically this whole universal versatility approach, like the more diverse you are, the better you'll be all around. So it really wasn't fair for me to say specialization question, because you knew exactly where I was coming with it. From my presence online. But
right.
Wayne, I think it is the death of youth sports in a way. You get these kids, and they just, like you said, we'll stick with volleyball. You're playing it 4 months, 4 seasons out of the year. It should just be a single season sport, right? You end up playing through, and you go through summer camp, and then you do this, and you're doing the same thing. The biggest thing I see, one, is I see a lot of burnout, right? I see kids never even get that. They never even get that chance to get that scholarship. By the time they're a sophomore or junior, they're like, this is bullshit. I'm just over it. I've been doing this since I was 9 years old. You know, it's it's another job almost. It's
Yeah.
40, 50 hours a week they're putting in instead of being a kid.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, at the end of the day, it's really not skills that get recruited. I mean, you got to be good at whatever sport it is, but ultimately it's the best athletes that make it. Who's the most athletic? Because you can teach somebody a drill. Right? You can work on something else. You can have a basketball player. I use basketball for example. It's March Madness right now. We'll switch to basketball. Right? Yeah, they're always talking about upside on players going to the NBA. They pick these guys because they're basically bigger, faster, and more athletic. Right? Then they get there, they develop them. All right, we need you to be a little bit better outside shooter. So guess what? They put the time in the gym over the summer, and they work on becoming a better outside shooter, or they work on their post game, whatever it is they need to work on. But they're getting recruited because they're more athletic. Now, being more athletic, play more sports, get better at a lot of different things, so that you develop as a true athlete. In my opinion, an athlete can do anything they want and be pretty good at it. That's what makes you an athlete.
I definitely agree with what you're saying. The more athletic an individual is, the more opportunities they're going to have. And like I said, I get what the young athletes thinking. I get what the parents are thinking, that we're going to get more exposure, we're going to get noticed, and this and that. And I don't know what the percentages are, but there's just so many people with that same mindset going after that same thing. And if you don't have that athleticism as a foundation, you're not going to get noticed. In a sport like, and I don't mean to be picking on volleyball, but or basketball, your genetics have so much to do with that. I mean, how tall are you going to be? How long is your wingspan? Just different things like that. And you can be, obviously there's other positions on the court or on the floor, but it's just one of those things again that there's so many things that are out of control for you and are out of your hands. And you can always control your attitude and your effort, and the things you're doing at night. Are you getting enough to eat? Are you sleeping enough? Things like that. You can always control that, but at the end of the day, there's always just somebody that's got the edge that you don't have. And what happens then if something doesn't work out? Or it's tough to say. I never had the athleticism to be a potential Division I athlete, and so it's tough to judge or to come across as being fair, but just looking at the amount of athletes I've worked with, since I've been in this business since 2000, and only working, or most of them are junior high and high school athletes. Just seeing what it takes to get to that next level, and then seeing how they can develop once they're there. I think that multi-sport athlete is just a more prepared individual overall, especially if you're playing team sports and individual sports. If you're wrestling and football, or tennis and basketball, or something like this, you learn to work as a team, or you learn to work as an individual. You got to be able to have both skills.
Yeah, I always did individual sports. I did cross country, wrestling, and track. They were all individual sports. So it always was like a lot on me. But I did the relays and track, and of course there's a little bit of a team mindset to that. And
sure,
obviously in wrestling there is a team element to it. Like,
yep.
Sometimes it comes down to you, and you need a pin for your team to win, or are you going to get by them, on a decision?
Right.
The college athlete, I've always questioned. I certainly wasn't good enough for D1, but definitely got looked at for D2 in cross country. And then had a brief conversation about wrestling a couple times. But I decided to go to the school I always wanted to go to for academics, and went that route. But what was cool about that is when I got there, I played a ton of intramurals and was always doing something athletic and fun. And it was kind of because of that background of just playing whatever sport was on TV. We'd go outside and play that. It gave me this freedom to do all that. And I always try to associate athleticism with freedom.
Sure.
Like if the neighborhood kids are playing ultimate frisbee, and then if they go out there and they're playing soccer, you should be able to do that. Like, you should never have to sit out or not be part of what the neighborhood kids are doing because you suck. And the reason you suck is because you've only done one sport your whole life because your parents put you in baseball when you're 4, and you do baseball every weekend. So the one weekend that you're not traveling or not on a bus going somewhere to a hotel to stay and play a tournament, and you want to play with your friends, you're like getting laughed at because you can't do it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I've always wanted that ability to. All right, cool, man. I might not be the best guy there, but I'll be good enough to play with you guys and be competitive.
Yeah. No, there's a lot to say to just being, functional in every aspect of your life. No, yeah. No, I think overall, taking my bias for the weight room out of it, overall, yeah, just being an athlete that is multi-talented or has developed all those tools to be a functional person is pretty important.
Yeah, and then I think last thing I'll say about this, because I'll get to our next question here. I think I read something one time that said if you had two kids, right, and one of them started, they used baseball in the example I was reading. It's like one kid started baseball when he was 5, right, and had all the fundamentals. And at 12 years old, another kid started baseball, right? Okay. And they're in the same grade, right? So one kid's already had 7 years of baseball. The other kid comes in at 12. So now they're both there. That kid starts over the next 4 years. It's at 16 when adolescence hits, and who has the better genetics is better athletes. That those 4 years of skills that one kid, if he's genetically the better athlete, he's the one that ends up going on to varsity into college.
Right.
It makes total sense. Like you said, you weighed genetics pretty heavy earlier in your example. I've always sort of, weighed it heavy. It's, if you got it genetically, you hear it all the time. Some of these guys that are in the NFL and NBA now, they're like, oh, they joined football or basketball their junior year of high school. Like they didn't grow up playing it. It's just they found a sport. They were a freaky athlete, and they finally found a sport that worked for them. So that's what it comes down to. I think it's silly a lot of times that all the time and money parents spend on putting their kid in a sport, 1 or 2 sports, just year round all the time, and it just seems like overkill to me. But
yeah, it's tough. Well, it's tough I think it's unfair to in some cases, if you're spending that kind of money on your child for a specific sport, for example, like we've been talking about, I think you put an unnecessary amount of pressure on them, whether you want to or not, to perform at a high level. And if you're dumping all kinds of money into, if you're trying to make your child in the next golf prodigy, and how expensive golf can be, you're getting private lessons, you're getting tee times, and you're traveling and you're playing all these tournaments nationwide, and you're trying to get exposure, and you got to qualify for this and that. And if your kid just can't perform under pressure or doesn't have that, I think that strains your relationship. And you want your relationship to be, you want that relationship to be the way it is, or are you looking for something like a, father? Like I just couldn't imagine spending that kind of, money on my daughter, and then having her worth be determined on how good she is. I really struggle with that concept. Some people are financially set; they can do it. They can spend their money whenever they want to. But when you're sacrificing your entire family for the hopes of one child making it in their sport, I think you're treading a thin ice. And if it all comes crashing down, man, I don't want to be a part of that.
The real catch financially is that you've actually spent more over the course of those years than you would have on college.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people get that. I think they're delusional. And another thing is, you touched on it. You really haven't talked about the psychological ramifications of that. I think you're spot on. Like, what kind of pressure are you putting on your kid, whether conscious or subconscious, if you put them in that situation all the time? Have you seen the documentary Trophy Kids?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, the 2013 film. I highly recommend it, listeners. If you're out there, go watch Trophy Kids. If you're kind of on the fence about this issue, or if maybe we've hit a nerve. That's fine, or it's okay if we hit a nerve on this show, because this show's about getting people to think and make changes. to be awake and alive. That's why we do the show. That's why we ask these hard questions and we have these tough conversations about some of these issues. But guys, check out that show, Trophy Kids. Listen, from a father standpoint, and Levi's a father too, you know, what we're saying is we want kids to be kids, and that if you let them be kids and let them play and do a lot of things, then ultimately they will be a better athlete because of it and because of the diversity that they were exposed to. And then Levi is adding on to that, just sort of summing up what we're talking about here. Levi is adding on to that. You know, you can't put the psychological pressure on him as well. And then from a strength coach standpoint, you know, because he's coming from a little bit different circle than I am. If you want your child to succeed, you need to create time and opportunity for them to put in the time in the gym so that they can become bigger, stronger, and faster properly and have that strength foundation as well. Am I correct in our sort of summation of what we've just talked about for the last 10, 12 minutes?
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Cool. All right, let's get our final topic of conversation here before we have to pop off here. Too sore to play. You said you were going to say it for a whole nother day. We've got a little bit of time here. Let's hit on it, man. I think it's a great topic. I've got my thoughts on it. We want to hear your thoughts first. You're the guest on the show. So let's hear when people say that as an excuse for not doing strength training while in season.
Well, you know, it's funny again because my clientele is young, and it comes down to, you know, usually the first thing that I have to deal with as a strength coach is when performance suffers. It's always, oh, they're working too hard, they're not resting, or, you know, they got too many commitments and this and that, and they're too sore, so they can't be lifting. And I hear it a lot from my basketball players. I got to have my legs, you know, and so the whole thing is that if you're not putting the time in the weight room and you come in one time, yeah, you're probably going to be sore. You're probably going to have a few days where it's going to take you to recover. You're going to be a little bit slower. But you're also a high schooler, and you have to make sure you're eating correctly. You have to make sure you're eating eating enough, and you got to make sure you're getting enough rest. Make sure you're getting enough water. Make sure you're doing all these little things that will play into your recovery. That will play into how your body's responding to those weight training sessions. And if you come consistently to that weight room and you're consistently getting your work in, you're not going to get sore to the point that you can't function. Sure, you might have a little bit of jello-y legs, you know, right after your session. But again, if you're getting your water, if you're getting your quality calories in, these kids recover so fast. I mean, they can play. You know, you can get a lift in the morning and play in the game at night. I mean, I can still do that. You know, at almost 39. So if I can do it and I can recover, I know that a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old can do it. And so they have to, in my opinion, they have to get into that mindset that, yes, I'm going to be a little bit uncomfortable for a while. You know, these first, you know, few weeks of preseason training, yeah, I'm going to be a little bit beat up, but my body's going to respond, you know, and it really, I don't want to say the first part of the season doesn't matter, but it's not how you start the season, it's how you finish it. And if you have to take a few lumps in the beginning to get a few adjustments in, I really think that the work you put in early will pay off at the end as long as you keep doing it. And, you know, if you're only going to come in once every 2 to 3 weeks, expect to be sore every time you come in. But if you're coming in consistently, yeah, your body will make that adjustment. It's the human body is absolutely amazing on how it adapts when it's given the types of stimulus that it needs. You know, with the proper nutrition, the proper hydration, the proper sleep, the proper percentages of loading and things like that. And so I never want my kids to be to the point where they can't walk when they're done. I mean, that's never that's never a session with me. It's always I need you to leave better. I need you to leave like you are getting. I want your training to give you, not take you. And so you know, the best way we can make that happen is showing up every day or showing up when we're required and not making excuses and things like that. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Definitely. Yeah, I remember the transition from cross country season to the first couple practices wrestling. I was always pretty sore.
Oh yeah.
But recovered fine and certainly was not as worse off as the teammates that came off the couch, you know.
Yes.
And it was like, okay, wrestling season's here. Let's get going these first 2 weeks of practice. And then I thought it was cool that you were thinking about how you can actually have a really hard session and still do stuff. I had that monster session on Friday that I posted. I actually tagged you in it. Strength Yield. And I mean, ridiculous. Heavy farmer's walks, front squats, Zercher squats, this stupid Atlas stone thing that I just decided to do for some reason. That was definitely in the bad decision strength club. And then some heavy static work as well, and then a shoulder fissure. Next day, I cleaned out 2 separate storage units for a total of almost 5 hours, and then played basketball all night at church. Low on the basketball court than normal, but I wasn't dead. Like you said, at 39, I'm coming up on 33. If you're constantly in the weight room and doing these things, that's exactly what you said. Like, consistency is king. And even when you have those workouts that spike the bell curve in terms of intensity and load, right? You can still manage the next day and the day after that.
And if you're pushing yourself to the point where you can't function the next day, then maybe you need to reevaluate what you're doing and how you're going to get there. And
you either need to evaluate the intensity or, like you said, the amount of time you're doing in the gym.
Right. Yeah. And
keep going.
Well, I was just gonna say, you need to be smart enough, and if you're on your own, or me as the coach, I need to be smart enough to vary what we're doing. I said my goal is performance for these kids, and if they can't, I'm never going to push them to the point where they can't play their sport. And that's just stupid. I mean, there's no way I wouldn't have a job if I did that. And so, just making sure that they understand that how their body works and how it's going to respond, and how we got to get out of our own way. We got to get out of our own head on what's going to be sore and things like that. And it's just always frustrating to me as a coach, strength coach, that I know that a lot of these kids aren't eating what they should be or eating enough, and I know they're not resting enough. I know that they're busy. They're up in the weight room at early in the morning, and they've got show choir, they have band, or they have a club team, and they're in season for track, for example. Like right now, we got club volleyball and track in season going on here, and if they're in band or they're in choir, I mean, they're super busy. So I know they're not getting enough sleep. But the first thing they're going to cut, or the first thing that does get cut, is their time in the weight room. And I know that I don't determine playing time, but I also know that there's a huge gap in your performance if you don't have that strength. So you're just not going to recover. You're just gonna continue to beat yourself down if you don't have that foundation set. So it's you gotta make sacrifices where you gotta make sacrifices, but we got to do the little things too. And I know I've said it probably 15 times already, but what are you eating? And are you eating enough? What are you drinking? Are you drinking enough water? Are you sleeping enough? Using that time if you've got a chance to take a nap on a Sunday afternoon, are you using that for yourself, or are you out, doing more things? In the summers here, Iowa plays baseball and softball in the summer. And we have this area is different than Iowa. You think of cornfield and cows and pigs and stuff, but where I'm located, we have all kinds of commercial lakes and opportunities to be doing all kinds of crazy things. And a lot of these kids will, they play a game at night. They lift in the morning. They'll play a game at night, and who knows what they're doing in the middle of the day. And a lot of times, hanging out in the sun all day, as well as anybody, it just zaps you. So if you can't catch up to a fastball at night, maybe we gotta reevaluate how we're spending our downtime, and making sure our downtime is allowing us to recover and to help us perform and reach our peak, as opposed to tearing around on the lake or just being out and about all the time. So I guess there's a whole, and it's tough. I shared earlier that when I was in high school, there's no way that I was the person that was going to be doing exactly what my coach said. I was going to be screwing around and being lazy with my training, and so I get it. I'm just not always patient. We always want what's best for our kids, and our kids think that they know what's best for us, or what's best for them, we have to come to that happy medium. And sometimes my patience runs very, very thin very quickly. And just because, you know, I see how much talent a lot of these kids have that I work with, and I just want to see them maximize it is all. But, yeah.
And nobody faults you for wanting the best for your athletes, and it's easy to understand getting frustrated. And like you said, you were a kid once, so you get it. You got to remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, find them in the middle. Real quick, last highlight point. I want to pull this out, make sure everybody caught what you were saying. Might even get you to write an article for us on it. So much on this show, especially with these high school and junior high school athletes. And I remember specifically when I was in high school, especially about the time my senior year, I was in a lot of AP classes. I was a 3-sport athlete. And I felt the actual pressure my peers to start getting less sleep. It was almost like it was glorified. It was like, oh, well, I was up till 12:30 doing this project because I had practice and scouts and this, right? And I started to feel this pressure. And then I remember, like, second semester, I was like, I'm just going to bed, guys. Like, because I started to listen to my body and feel it. But I think that there is pressure from the culture of being an overachiever in high school. It's like, well, sleep can be sacrificed. And then that carries over into college. Kids don't get any sleep.
Yep.
But they should. You never have more downtime than when you're in college, period. I don't care who you are, what you're doing. I'm tired of arguing with college students that act like their life's busy. I was like, I was in college. I was a very busy college student, and I still had more free time than I knew what to do with.
Yeah. For sure.
But bring up about sleep. Are you getting enough rest? We'd love if you'd, since it's sort of the end of the show, we'd love if you'd actually kick us an article on sleep as part of recovery and overall performance. That would be fantastic because it's an issue. It's something that doesn't get talked about enough. We talk about nutrition, we talk about fitness, but people don't talk about sleep. We even talk about rest and recovery. It's not the same as sleep and what sleep does for your body. So if you'd be willing to do that, that'd be awesome. Carry on the conversation.
Oh, it might be whenever. Okay.
Yeah. But I wanted to highlight that before we sign off because I didn't want anybody to miss the point that you have brought that up at almost every time you've talked about performance and what you get out of your athletes. Is one of the go-tos is sleep, and I think that's very important, especially with young people. I know we've got some young listeners, and I know we've got parents and listeners too. So, I think it's important that people hear that. But unfortunately, I've got to go make sure I get my kids out of school. And
sounds good.
But I really appreciate you taking time out of your day and being at the gym and spending some time with us on the show today. Levi, real quick before I go, and tell everybody where they can find you online, your social media profiles. Tell them a little bit about your online business real quick. Make sure you get a plug in there.
Okay. HarderToKillTraining.com, just one word, I guess, is my landing page. And you can go there for information on programming. There's a questionnaire on that website if you're interested in programming. Stuff that I put together based on a consultation that we would do over email, and give you a program designed based around what your goals are, what you need to improve at and improve on, or how we're going to help you become the best you can be, or become harder to kill from this life that we are immersed in. So HarderToKillTraining.com. My Instagram is Levi ARSL. That stands for Athletic Republic Spirit Lake. And I'm also on Facebook, and my business is on Facebook as well. That's Athletic Republic Spirit Lake. And so that would be awesome. I've got look forward to connect with anybody or touch base with somebody. And then again, if you go to my website, that'll get you linked right up to my email as well.
Perfect. Thanks for being on the show. Guys, go out and check out Levi's page. And once again, MadFit10, all caps, get you 10% off on your next subscription to MadFit Magazine on the website, I'mAwakeAndLive.com. Guys, thanks for joining us today. Levi, thanks for being on the show.
Sweet. Thanks for having me.